I would say, I think the conflict was probably more pervasive. I mean, over centuries, the nature of stratification between individuals and group have probably softened up. For instance, we don't have slaves anymore, where, there is a class of individual where the master has virtually complete control over their destiny. We have marginalized groups, we have subservient classes, but we don't have slaves.
The slavery that exists in child trafficking in Russia, and also women going from Sri Lanka, Bangladesh to the Middle East is indentured servitude.
Yeah, of course, but that is not approved. That's not socially approved.
Exactly,
that is not legally approved. That is something that people do, in a way, in a through back doors. They can't really endorse it. So in that sense, yes, human race, if you like, has progressed in some ways. But the other end that you pointed out is capitalism. Capitalism is very vicious because it's the engine to produce maximum profit.
Right.
So in order to produce maximum profit, that means that it has to have it has to accumulate in certain pockets with certain groups, and unless it accumulates, it's not able to invest. So this economic stratification that we see today is the direct product of capitalism, and that is why both Max Weber and Karl Marx, they are the ones who are, they're the ones who are the early critics of capitalism. Weber, as you said, through his life chances theory, treats, this class struggle in a more approving, in a more positive manner, where Karl Marx sees completely negatively as the exploitative side of the class struggle.
Yes.
So whereas Max Weber would see how these stratification that has come about, through capitalism, can actually open up new opportunities for a whole lot of people. Whereas Karl Marx would say that it is actually, at the end of the day, the control remains limited to fewer hands.
Because of the access to the means of production.
Because of the access to the means of production. So I would say class structure in Pakistani society is developing, it's unfolding, it's extending. But that does not mean that the distinction between high and low has evaporated. Pakistan, if you look at Pakistan is a very unique society, in a sense that it was a country which as a society that existed for hundreds of years.
Right.
But as a nation state, it came to be only 50 years ago. Now the trouble is that with the creation of Pakistan, if you remember Hanzalvi's famous thesis of salaried classes,
that's right,
Salariat joined. They were the ones who were pushing this movement for Pakistan, and that did materialize into increased social mobility across the classes. When we have all have heard stories how people, stories of rag to riches. Soon after partition, people came empty-handed, and within a generation, they were, the movers of the shakers of the country. So at one level, there is a great, degree of, inter-class mobility in Pakistan. But at the other end, so you see these new emerging middle classes who are start frequently visiting those places, which were the preserve of the elite, because as we all know, Murree as a hill station was developed by British, and in the beginning it was only the British colonial elite and not even natives, Indian, even gentry was allowed at the Murree Hill Station. It was only when they left that the native gentry took over, and then they started monopolizing that sort of place. So at one end we do see a lot of social mobility, new classes emerging. Think about this trading class that has emerged and actually shaped Pakistani national politics. Nawaz Sharif, the group that he belongs to, his supporters are not big industrialists.
This was what we would call the proto-bourgeoisie.
The proto-bourgeoisie and the small traders. They are all sprung up in all small towns and cities, and they're conservative. They probably will not side with PPP, but they will side with right-wing parties like PMLN and Q. So there, at one end there is a class mobility and lots going on, but the other end, if you look at the access to resources, there is no land reforms here, so all of Sindh and all of Balochistan and all of Fatan, whatnot, is actually controlled by very few families. So the feudal control that the British has created is still deeply entrenched. And then there are industrial class is very weak in this country because predominantly agricultural feudal classes have held the state hostage. As a result of that, what could have been achieved through Pakistan has not really come through because of this colonial control, the classes that were created during the colonial period. And these new classes are struggling to come out of those shackles.
I'd
like to comment on this. Well, I would say a couple of things. One, caste and rank are equivalent in European sense. As Denzel Ibbotson, the first official ethnographer of Punjab, he said that what people in India call caste, we in Europe had called it rank, right? A determinant of social status. But one additional baggage that Indian caste system carried was ritual pollution. Now, this element of ritual pollution, which is sanctified by Hindu religion, is something which is missing in European context, where because of increased mobility, people were able to switch over. This is one point. Another very interesting point is, again, quoting Denzel Ibbotson, that he thinks that this theory of occupational caste that he came up with was precisely raised in order to refute that Indological thesis of caste system, that caste is divided into four Varna classification, as we call it. So he said, no, it does not really hold true in Punjab. Because here the control of, there's a very few Hindus here, there are Sikhs and Muslims, and because of, Sikhs and Muslim, the puritanical control of caste system, as we know in rest of India, does not really happen in Punjab. Here in Punjab, the distinction is more in terms of baradari. In terms of kinship relations,
subcaste and kinships,
rather than something which is a generic description of clans, which are hierarchically organized.
And it's very something similar. I think Mahatma Gandhi also said. He commented. He said that the castes are prevalent in all the societies, except that Hinduism has made a science out of that.
Exactly. and to add to that, here in Punjab, again according to Ibbotson, the distinction between caste and class began to sort of run into each other, in a sense that, I mean, it is very
coincidence.
The very famous quotation from him that if you had a good crop, then you might would like to raise your status from inferior Jat clan to superior Jat clan, and if God is favorable to you, one day you will become Sayyid. He's saying, and he has said it, that there is a great deal of inter-caste mobility in Punjab. If you belong to one
process called being returning, that you return to some village as something else.
Exactly. So that sense, caste is not as it's not a fixed category as in rest of India. In our sort of case, caste is more sort of mobile. There's more fluid. There's a lot of movement between caste. So, and there are jokes about it as well. So this is about caste. When you think of class, now class is something which does not stand apart, as Dr. Hafiz has earlier said. It is not only defined by economic status. It is defined by ethnicity. It is defined by religion. It is now increasingly be defined by schooling, education. So I think this relationship between class and education is interesting. For instance, as we know, very popular thieves from martial races who were recruited to army. Similarly, if you look at education system in colonial Lahore, at one end of Mall Road there is HSM College, which is for those who have a heredity claim to royalty, royal blood. And the other end, the lower end of the Mall Road, there was something called No School of Art, which had a strong preference for artisan caste.
Mohammedan Anglo-Oriental,
No School of Art, which is presently NCA.
Oh, the present NCA, yes.
Present NCA, called No School of Art. had a huge preference for artisan caste. Similarly, the veterinary schools here had a preference for every agricultural caste. So colonial education, instead of eliminating these caste differences, actually reinforced.
Yes.
Happen in India in a way. For instance, in India, English language is no longer the identity marker of upper class. I mean, across the board, I have known couples who, one is from, sort of a remote part of India who speaks some other language, and the other is a Delhi-based person who speaks Urdu, and they communicate through English, not because they want to elevate their social status, but actually that's the only common language between them. So Indians have a less sort of taxing relation with English language than we Pakistanis.
Because in South India, the English literacy is 90%, and if not, maybe more, I don't know, but in North India it is less.
So they have somehow taken...
But yet there is the social friction.
Social friction is there, but they have somehow taken the sting out of the English language that we still carry.
Right. That's very significant.
Yes, of course. Secondly, the most important thing is, I believe, this, this shame that you refer, that we don't no longer take pride on our own culture, values, heritage, and few other things. It's precisely because of colonialism. We have been made to feel ashamed of our own language. The missionary school that was set up, the convents, where it is, you will be punished if you speak even a word of Urdu. So that colonial pathology, colonialism has created a pathology.
I agree with you completely on that account, but now that the white man is gone, we have our own people running the show.
But colonial legacy remains.
Legacy remains, yes.
It does, and not only that, colonialism, as we were earlier talking about new imperialism, we do see that British has left, but Americans have stepped in. They were the ones who shaped the most authentic educational policy document that we have today.
Now let's look.